How can one man appear in 4 different Japanese cities at the exact same time? It was a question that haunted law enforcement for years, a puzzle that seemed pulled straight from a crime thriller yet played out in real life across Japan's sprawling urban landscapes. Tokyo, Osaka, Sapporo, and Fukuoka, 4 cities, thousands of miles apart, each hosting a man who moved with quiet precision, collecting packages that vanished into the shadows of the Yakuza underworld. In Tokyo, a nondescript office worker slipped out during lunch hours, blending seamlessly into the sea of salarymen. His routine was unremarkable, his face easily forgotten. Yet, he was the recipient of a small, unmarked parcel, exchanged in a secluded alleyway, a transaction so smooth it left no trace. Meanwhile, in Osaka, a bicycle courier navigated the crowded streets with practiced ease, stopping briefly at a nondescript cafe to receive a similar package. His movements were swift, almost mechanical, as if rehearsed countless times. Far north in Sapporo, a cram school instructor paused between classes to accept a discreet envelope handed over from a shadowy figure. His calm demeanor betrayed no hint of the dangerous game he played. Thousands of miles south in Fukuoka, a fisherman emerged from the early morning mist, exchanging a weathered briefcase with a contact near the docks. Each man had a life, a story that fit perfectly into their city's rhythm, each carrying out a task essential to the Yakuza's secret communications network. Authorities tracked these men for nearly a decade, convinced they were dealing with 4 separate couriers. Surveillance footage, witness testimonies, and even neighborhood interactions all supported the existence of these distinct individuals. Yet, no package ever reached its destination intact. Messages disappeared, money vanished, and secrets were lost without a trace. The syndicate grew anxious, desperate to find the leak, but their courier remained elusive. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. A seasoned detective noticed a peculiar detail: 4 sets of handwriting, identical in style and flourish, appeared simultaneously in Tokyo, Osaka, Sapporo, and Fukuoka. It was a signature only one man could produce. Suddenly, the lines between 4 lives blurred into one. The chase was no longer for multiple men, but for a single ghost slipping through the cracks of reality itself, a master who had built 4 lives so convincingly that even the law struggled to grasp his true identity. Before we dive deeper, take a moment and settle in, because what's coming next will challenge everything you thought you knew about this case. The threads are about to intertwine in ways that blur the line between truth and illusion even further. Stick around, because the shadows are about to reveal secrets that could change the entire game. Trust me, you won't want to miss a single detail as the story unfolds. At first, the disappearances were subtle, almost easy to dismiss as clerical errors or simple misplacement. A ledger here, a cash envelope there, small items that vanished during routine transports between headquarters and various safe houses. The shipments themselves were never large, designed to avoid attention, but the missing pieces were critical. Ledgers containing transaction records, sealed envelopes with uncounted cash, encrypted USB drives holding sensitive data, all vanished without a trace. The syndicate's internal security protocols, usually ironclad, now felt inexplicably porous. Within the shadowed corridors of the Yakuza's inner sanctum, unease began to spread. These losses were not the result of careless handling, nor were they the product of simple theft by external thieves. The meticulous nature of the disappearances suggested careful planning and intimate knowledge of the syndicate's operations. The first instinct was to suspect betrayal from within, a mole compromising the flow of goods and information. Yet, every courier involved in the missing shipments was different, dispatched from various branches with no overlapping routes or contacts. Interrogations followed quickly. Each courier was pulled aside for questioning, under the harsh glare of suspicion. The men and women who carried the packages were seasoned operatives, loyal and experienced. They denied any wrongdoing, and their alibis checked out under scrutiny. Surveillance footage, where available, showed no irregularities during the transfers. The chain of custody was intact, yet the items were gone. The syndicate's enforcers found themselves chasing shadows. No fingerprints, no signs of forced entry, no betrayals uncovered. Confusion rippled through the organization. Communications tightened, and protocols were revised to include more stringent checks and encrypted tracking for shipments. Still, the thefts continued, scattered across different couriers and locations, as if the thief anticipated every move. The syndicate's logistics network, usually a well-oiled machine, now bore the strain of heightened security measures and internal suspicion. Trust, once implicit among the couriers and handlers, began to fracture. The nature of the stolen items only deepened the mystery. Ledgers held financial details that could unravel the syndicate's entire operation if exposed. Cash envelopes contained funds critical for bribes and black market deals. Encrypted USBs potentially held compromising data or communication logs. Whoever was taking these items was not stealing for personal gain. They were disrupting the syndicate's lifeblood. The question gnawed at the leadership. Was this an enemy operating from the outside, or a traitor embedded among them, hiding behind the faces of trusted couriers? As pressure mounted, the syndicate's eyes turned outward with increasing paranoia. The possibility of an external adversary infiltrating their supply chain became a stark reality. The stolen shipments were never recovered, and the thieves left no discernible trail. Each theft seemed to occur just as new security measures were put in place, as if the perpetrator anticipated every countermove. In private meetings, under dim lights and guarded voices, the syndicate's leaders exchanged theories tinged with fear. The enemy was no longer just a shadow within. It was a ghost outside, wearing masks that no one could see through. The question now was not just who, but how. How could someone remain invisible at every turn, slipping through the cracks of a network built on loyalty and vigilance? The latest disappearance was the most brazen yet. A package containing a full set of encrypted drives, scheduled for handoff between two trusted operatives. Surveillance was comprehensive and security at its peak. Yet the package never arrived. When the second courier opened his case, it was empty. No sign of tampering, no forced entry, no clue. The thief had struck again, and once more vanished without a trace. The syndicate's leaders realized with a sinking certainty that their adversary was always one step ahead, anticipating their moves before they could act. The game had changed. The shadows were no longer just hiding secrets, they were actively reshaping the rules. And in the heart of this silent war, the Yakuza was beginning to understand that the threat was far more elusive and dangerous than they had ever imagined. The security footage flickered to life, revealing the first man, a quiet office worker in Tokyo. He moved deliberately through the narrow corridors of a modest high-rise, his steps measured and unhurried. Dressed in a plain gray suit, his demeanor exuded an unremarkable normalcy. Nothing about him invited suspicion. Every morning, he entered the building at precisely 8:15 a.m., greeted the receptionist with a polite nod, and disappeared into a cubicle where he spent his days typing reports and answering emails. His apartment, nestled in a tidy residential block near Shinjuku, was spotless, with neighbors describing him as polite but reserved. No one could imagine this man entangled in the shadowy undercurrents that had gripped the city. Halfway across the country, the second man pedaled furiously through the winding streets of Osaka. A bicycle courier, he was a fixture on the city's bustling avenues, delivering packages with a practiced efficiency. His lean frame and weathered face told tales of long days braving rain and sun alike. He wore a bright yellow jacket emblazoned with his company's logo, and his backpack was stuffed with parcels destined for office towers and shopping districts. His routine was chaotic yet predictable. Weaving through traffic jams, exchanging brief nods with fellow couriers, and returning each evening to a cramped apartment shared with two roommates. His life was a constant blur of motion, but to those around him, he was simply a hard-working young man making his way. In the northern reaches of Sapporo, the third man stood before a classroom blackboard, chalk in hand. A cram school instructor, he specialized in preparing high school students for university entrance exams. His classroom was filled with neatly arranged desks, motivational posters, and stacks of textbooks. Known for his patient teaching style and quiet encouragement, he was well-liked by students and parents alike. He lived in a modest home in a quiet suburb, where neighbors often saw him tending to a small garden or walking his dog in the evenings. His life was orderly, marked by the rhythms of academic terms and local festivals, a stark contrast to the chaos unfolding elsewhere. Down south in Fukuoka, the fourth man cast his net into the early morning waters. A fisherman by trade, his hands bore the calluses of years spent hauling nets and repairing boats. His weather-beaten face was framed by a thick beard, and his eyes held a steady calm that came from intimate knowledge of the sea. His days began before dawn, navigating the harbor before returning with the day's catch to sell at the local market. He lived in a small seaside cottage where the scent of salt and fish mingled with the briny air. To his neighbors, he was a steadfast presence, reliable and unassuming, rooted deeply in the rhythms of coastal life. Each man existed in his own world, defined by daily routines and genuine interactions. Their lives were documented, verified, and seemingly disconnected. Real addresses, real jobs, real neighbors who vouched for their character. There was no hint that any of them were linked beyond the mundane patterns of ordinary existence. Yet, as investigators pored over the footage, a chilling realization took shape. Despite the vast distances and divergent lifestyles, something subtle and undeniably significant connected these four men. A pattern hidden in plain sight, invisible to anyone who didn't know where to look. But what it was and why it mattered remained a puzzle. The shadows whispered their secret, but the truth had not yet come into focus. The Courier's mastery lay not just in creating separate lives, but in inhabiting them fully, breathing them into existence with an authenticity that defied superficial scrutiny. Each identity was a living, breathing persona, complete with its own social ecosystem and daily rhythms. He didn't simply mimic behaviors. He internalized them, allowing these distinct selves to operate independently with seamless consistency. In one city, he was a barista known for his precise morning routine, arriving at the same cafe before dawn, exchanging casual jokes with regular customers, and carefully crafting lattes with a practiced flair. His gestures were fluid and natural. The tilt of his head when listening, the subtle nods punctuating conversations, the habitual wiping of the espresso machine's steam wand. His speech carried a regional cadence, peppered with slang and idioms picked up from years embedded in that community. He frequented local markets, knew the names of shopkeepers, and even volunteered for neighborhood events, all recorded in countless social media check-ins and digital interactions that mapped a believable online presence. In stark contrast, another identity existed miles away, a corporate analyst who thrived in the glow of office monitors during weekday hours. Here, his habits changed entirely. Early morning jogs through tree-lined parks, a well-worn briefcase always slung over his shoulder, and a calm, measured tone during meetings. His gestures were subdued but confident, a quick hand gesture to emphasize points, a practiced posture that conveyed authority. Online, he maintained a network of professional contacts, engaging in industry forums and sharing relevant content that mirrored his occupational role. His calendar was meticulously organized, peppered with virtual meetings and lunch appointments that matched his purported lifestyle. The third persona was a student, younger and more carefree, with a wardrobe and speech style that reflected current youth culture. He attended classes, posted photos at campus events, and participated actively in online groups tied to his supposed university. His routines included late-night study sessions, weekend outings, and casual coffee dates. His speech was informal, marked by slang and rapid shifts in tone that mirrored teenage vernacular. Small gestures, a nervous bite of the lip, a casual shrug, lent credibility, signaling the nervous energy of youth. The final identity was an artist in a bustling urban neighborhood, frequenting galleries and cafes, often seen sketching in public parks. His gestures were deliberate but expressive, animated hands when describing ideas, a habitual tilt of the head while observing his surroundings. His speech was poetic, with carefully chosen words and a rhythm that suggested creativity. He posted images of his work, interacted with local artists, and attended exhibitions, all digitally verifiable and consistent with his supposed lifestyle. Each persona had its own set of friends, acquaintances, and routines that reinforced their individuality. The Courier attended social gatherings, exchanged pleasantries, and maintained conversations that left no room for doubt. He crafted digital footprints that spanned social media, email, and even dating apps with histories that extended years back. His online activity wasn't static. It evolved naturally, reflecting changes in interests and relationships. Scheduled habits, daily commutes, gym visits, meal times were adhered to with precision. Even minor details like preferred coffee orders or favorite music genres were consistent and believable. The courier's ability to inhabit these identities was so complete that even those closest to each persona never suspected a thing. He adapted speech patterns, gestures, and emotional responses effortlessly, moving through social spheres as if they were second nature. It was this depth of immersion that rendered him untraceable. There were no cracks, no inconsistencies to exploit. Yet, as investigators delved deeper, a new unease surfaced. The identities were too flawless, their histories too perfectly aligned, their routines too consistent. There were no messy contradictions, no unexpected deviations that real lives invariably produce. The digital footprints were immaculate, free of glitches or anomalies that typically betray forgery. The social networks seemed curated, relationships maintained with mechanical precision. Questions began to mount. Could a single individual truly sustain for separate lives with such impeccable detail and consistency? Or was there something else at play? Something deliberately engineered to confound detection? The shadows held their secret tightly, but the truth was inching closer, waiting to be unveiled. Detective Marcus Hale leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing as he scanned the latest batch of documents spread across the cluttered desk. For different forms, each filled out in different cities, by 4 men with no apparent connection, or so it seemed. The names, the addresses, the dates of birth, all carefully fabricated, yet distinct. At first glance, nothing linked these identities. But something nagged at Marcus, a faint whisper in the patterns he'd learned to see over decades chasing ghosts. He picked up the first form, turning it over slowly, then compared it to the second. His gaze sharpened. The loops of the lowercase e in both samples curved the exact same way. The capital letters bore an unusual flourish, a subtle but deliberate twist at the end of each stroke. The spacing between letters was consistent, the pressure on the paper uniform. It was impossible. Handwriting was as unique as fingerprints, or so he had believed. But these 4 men, scattered across states, had signed their names in an identical script. Marcus's fingers trembled slightly as he pulled out a magnifying glass from his desk drawer. He examined the strokes meticulously, noting the way the pen hesitated just before crossing the TS and how the RS curled upward like a silent signature. The more he studied, the clearer it became. These were not separate hands, but one. And if that was true, then all 4 identities were fronts, masks worn by a single individual. His mind raced back to the seemingly unrelated cases tied to these names. Each man appeared in a different city, with no known contact between them. Yet, here was undeniable proof that they were one and the same. Marcus felt a cold surge of adrenaline. This was the break he had been waiting for, the first real lead that could unravel the entire web of deception. He reached for his phone, fingers flying as he sent a secure message to his trusted forensic analyst. Handwriting samples from suspects A, B, C, and D are identical. Need immediate confirmation. His eyes flicked back to the documents, heartbeat echoing in his ears. If this handwriting match held up, it would upend everything the department thought it knew about the case. Marcus stared out the window, the city lights blurring into streaks. The idea that one person had managed to construct 4 flawless lives, each with its own history and alibi, was staggering. It explained the social media profiles that felt too curated, too rehearsed. The mechanical precision of every interaction suddenly made sense. This was no ordinary criminal. It was a ghost operating behind layers of illusion. The detective's thoughts spiraled into the implications. How did this individual maintain such control? What was the endgame? And most unsettling, if these 4 identities were connected, what else was hidden beneath the surface, waiting to be uncovered? Suddenly, his phone buzzed. The message from Forensic came in, confirmed. Handwriting samples are a match beyond reasonable doubt. Marcus swallowed hard. This was the moment the case pivoted from baffling to explosive. The chase was no longer for four men, but one elusive figure who had slipped through every crack, leaving only shadows in their wake. He gathered the forms carefully, his mind already racing toward the next step. The city was vast, the trail cold, but now he had a thread, fragile but real. A thread that might finally lead him to the ghost. As he prepared to dive deeper, a new piece of information flickered across his screen. A location tied to one of the four identities. A place no one had thought to check. Marcus's pulse quickened. The hunt was about to take a dangerous turn, and the shadows were about to reveal their secret. The orphanage was a sprawling, concrete cage that swallowed children whole and spat out ghosts. From the moment he arrived, he learned quickly how the system worked, or rather, how it failed. Names were assigned and reassigned with careless indifference. Birth dates shifted on paper like waves in a storm. Records piled up in dusty cabinets, forgotten and neglected, but always there, waiting for someone to exploit the cracks. He lived in those cracks. The bureaucratic loopholes became his playground, the worn-out ledgers and filing cabinets his tutors. At an age when most kids worried about what game to play, he was focused on memorizing the formats of official documents, the subtle differences between a notarized stamp and a photocopy, the quirks in handwriting of various social workers. Most of the others didn't care, but he did. The system's gaps whispered secrets to him. He watched how the staff shuffled papers like a deck of cards, how a missing signature could delay a transfer, or how a misplaced form could erase someone's existence for weeks. He saw the chain of command tangled in red tape, how identity was less about who you were and more about what was written down and who vouched for it. From forged release forms to altered attendance sheets, the orphanage was rife with small acts of deception. He absorbed them all. At first, it was a survival mechanism. If he wanted to avoid being sent to a harsher institution or if he wanted extra meals, he learned to manipulate the system. A forged signature here, a swapped file there. He became adept at mimicking handwriting, imitating the flourishes of the social workers' signatures until they were indistinguishable. Paperwork was no longer a barrier, it became a tool. His skills sharpened when the orphanage began rotating children through external foster homes under the city's faltering child services. He observed that the foster families rarely verified documents thoroughly. A falsified referral or a doctored background check could reroute a child's path entirely. He began fabricating entire identities for himself, new names, new birth dates, new histories. Each was carefully crafted to match the behaviors he could imitate. He learned quickly that identity was a combination of two things: the paperwork that declared it and the behavior that proved it. If the papers said he was someone and he acted like that person, no one would question it. Teachers, caseworkers, even police officers, none could see past the constructed identity because they were trained to trust the system, not the individual. By the time he was a teenager, he had multiple false identities woven into the city's bureaucratic web. He could slip between them like a shadow, untraceable and unseen. The orphanage's records became a labyrinth, and he was its ghost. But it wasn't just about hiding anymore. The knowledge gave him power, the power to choose who he wanted to be, to erase his past and forge a future on his own terms. This skill set, born from necessity and honed through years of silent observation, was his greatest weapon. Yet, despite all he had learned, he was still a boy with no real family, no real name, and no real past. Then came the message, a silent summons from the underworld, referencing a particular identity he had never used publicly but had crafted meticulously. The name belonged to someone who had disappeared years ago, a ghost in the shadows of the city's criminal underbelly. The message was clear. If he wanted to survive, if he wanted answers, he had to step into the Yakuza's world. As he crossed the threshold into that dark, dangerous realm, the weight of all his forged identities pressed down on him. Each step forward was a gamble. One wrong move, and the fragile web of lies would unravel, exposing him to enemies who did not forgive. But the boy who had learned to shape identities was ready. The game had changed, and in the shadows of the Yakuza, he would either become a legend or disappear forever. He didn't just adopt multiple identities, he embodied them. For distinct lives, each painstakingly crafted, operated in parallel yet isolated spheres. ensuring that no thread could be pulled to unravel the whole. His strategy wasn't merely about evasion. It was a calculated architecture of deception designed to safeguard the most sensitive Yakuza secrets. By compartmentalizing roles and information, he transformed himself into a living firewall, one that no investigator could breach without setting off alarms. The first identity was that of a low-level courier, a face easily overlooked, blending effortlessly into crowds. This persona handled the movement of coded messages concealed within innocuous packages. Cigarette packs, food containers, even discarded newspapers. His routes were unpredictable, deliberately shifting between quiet residential alleys and bustling market streets. Surveillance teams often found themselves tailing shadows only to lose them in the chaos of daily city life. This courier identity never crossed paths with the others, ensuring that even if compromised, it would reveal nothing beyond trivial deliveries. His second life was a mid-tier enforcer working in plain sight at a legitimate front, a small but popular bar frequented by Yakuza members. This identity was crucial for gathering human intelligence. From behind the bar, he listened to whispered conversations, interpreted subtle shifts in allegiance, and monitored rival factions' movements. Yet, he was more than a passive observer. He manipulated information flows, feeding false leads to outsiders while reinforcing loyalty within his own circles. Here, the secrets weren't physical objects to be moved but coded language embedded in casual talk, protected by layers of social engineering. The third persona was a financial intermediary, masquerading as a discreet accountant for a shell company. This identity managed the flow of untraceable funds and laundered money through a web of offshore accounts and fake invoices. He used cutting-edge encryption technology to mask transactions and employed a rotating cast of digital proxies to cover his tracks. This financial lifeline was critical. If exposed, it would reveal the Yakuza's financial underpinnings and lead investigators directly to the core operation. But by isolating this identity's digital footprint from the others, he ensured that even data breaches could be contained without cascading damage. The final identity was the most elusive, a ghost known only by a codename within the organization. This was the strategist, the mind behind the moves, who orchestrated interactions between the other three. Operating through encrypted channels and untraceable devices, this persona never met any of the other identities in person. Instead, he communicated through dead drops, coded messages, and trusted intermediaries. By maintaining this degree of separation, he created a layered defense system. If one identity was compromised, the others could adapt and continue functioning, preserving the integrity of the entire operation. Each persona operated within a rigid schedule, deliberately designed to minimize overlap and reduce patterns. He exploited the city's sprawling infrastructure, public transport, underground tunnels, and crowded festivals to mask transitions. The use of distinct physical mannerisms, speech patterns, and even biometric disguises further prevented recognition. His mastery of digital countermeasures, from burner phones to signal jammers, ensured that no electronic trail could connect his multiple lives. Yet, the complexity of this web was also its vulnerability. Detectives from Shadow Crimes had begun piecing together fragments, overlapping timestamps, shared anomalies in communication logs, and subtle behavioral echoes. They realized they weren't chasing 4 different men but one man playing 4 parts. Now they planned a trap leveraging this insight. A staged information exchange designed to lure each identity into a controlled environment where surveillance and interception would be absolute. The question was whether their understanding was enough to outmaneuver a man who didn't just hide behind identities. He became them. The sterile room buzzed with low murmurs as the team prepared for the operation. Every detail had been calculated. Overlapping interview times, separate entrances funneling into a single holding area, and a web of hidden cameras recording from every angle. This was no ordinary questioning. This was a trap engineered to catch a man who had blurred the lines between himself and his many facades. The stakes were high. If even one identity slipped through, the game would continue. Detective Harris paced near the entrance, eyes flicking to the monitors. The team's tension was palpable, knuckles white around coffee cups and fingers tapping nervously on the tabletop. They knew the man's history of manipulation and disguise. He didn't just change names. He rewrote his very presence. The challenge was to force all 4 identities into one moment, to expose the truth beneath the layers. Minutes before the scheduled time, the first door creaked open. One by one, the separate entrances remained empty. Whispers turned into frustrated exclamations. They checked the feeds again, no sign of any arrivals. The trap was failing. Then, just as the clock ticked past the start time, the main entrance swung open. A man stepped inside. Tall, composed, his posture confident. At first glance, nothing seemed unusual. But as he approached the interrogation table, the room grew silent. His face was unsettling. Too perfect, too smooth. The shadows played tricks, but there was something unnatural about the contours, the texture of his skin. It was a mask, a hyper-realistic mask. Detective Ramirez's eyes narrowed. Who the hell is that? The man's lips curled into a faint, unreadable smile. He took the seat without hesitation, hands folded neatly on the table. The room held its breath. This was supposed to be one of the 4 identities summoned. But the mask suggested something else. A deliberate deception layered on top of the already complex ruse. Name, Harris demanded, voice steady despite the unease creeping in. The man tilted his head slightly, voice calm but controlled. Does it really matter now? Ramirez stepped forward, pulling a small light from her pocket. We're going to find out. And you're not walking out of here until we do. The team exchanged glances, the weight of the moment sinking in. This was no ordinary suspect. This was a man who had mastered the art of invisibility through identity, now hiding behind a mask over his mask. The question was whether they could peel back the layers before he slipped away again. Harris reached out slowly, fingers trembling with anticipation as he prepared to remove the mask. The man's eyes flickered, an almost imperceptible sign of resistance. The room tensed, every second stretching thin. As Harris's fingers touched the edge of the mask, a faint whisper echoed from the hallway outside, a sound that shattered the fragile silence and hinted that the trap might be far from over. Harris hesitated, frozen for a heartbeat as the faint whisper drifted in, but the urgency pushed him forward. His fingers gripped the mask's edge firmly and pulled it away. The mask slid off smoothly, revealing not a face etched with scars or familiarity, but another flawless visage, too perfect, almost artificial. The eyes beneath shimmered with a cold, mechanical glint, unmoving except for a slow, deliberate blink. A collective breath was held in the room. The man before them wasn't who they thought he was. Beneath the first mask lay yet another disguise, a second layer that blurred the line between flesh and fabrication. Harris's mind raced, piecing together the impossible. The face underneath was a hyper-realistic prosthetic, a masterwork of synthetic skin and animatronics designed to deceive even the closest scrutiny. Before anyone could react, the man's fingers twitched, and with a sudden, fluid motion, he slipped a hidden latch at the base of his neck. The synthetic face began to peel away like a second skin, revealing a third, less refined layer underneath, scarred, worn, and unmistakably human. The final truth was raw and vulnerable, but the revelation came too late. In that split second, the man twisted sharply, knocking over a small table that held a stack of burning documents. Flames licked upward, consuming paper that had been meticulously prepared to self-destruct. The acrid smell of smoke filled the cramped room as the fire spread rapidly. Alarms blared, drowning out every other sound. Chaos erupted. Harris shouted for backup, but the man was already moving, his escape route carefully planned and flawlessly executed. He darted toward a concealed panel behind a bookshelf, disguised as part of the wall, revealing a narrow corridor bathed in faint emergency lighting. Without hesitation, he vanished into the passage, the door sliding shut behind him with a soft hiss. The room was left in disarray. Burned fragments of documents smoldered on the floor, the blackened edges curling like dead leaves. For separate identities, each painstakingly crafted over years, crumbled simultaneously. The man had erased every trace of himself. The mask, the synthetic face, and the final human guise, all illusions designed to fragment and confuse. Agents scrambled to secure the area, But the man's escape was seamless, a testament to his foresight and preparation. Harris's mind reeled as he pieced together the implications. Every file, every dossier, every lead tied to the 4 identities was now reduced to ash. Outside, in the dimly lit corridor, footsteps echoed faintly. The man moved swiftly, his breath steady despite the close call. A small device in his palm blinked. A tracker, a beacon, or perhaps a signal. He glanced back once, eyes narrowing with a calculated calm, then pressed a button. The device emitted a silent pulse, sending a signal somewhere unknown. The final question hung in the air. Who was he really? And more importantly, where would he strike next? As the flames consumed the last remnants of his past, a shadow detached itself from the darkness ahead, waiting, watching, ready to play the next move in a game no one yet understood. No one ever uncovered the truth behind the man who walked through 4 lives like a ghost slipping between dimensions. Not a single photograph, no official record, no whispered rumor ever pinned down what he truly looked like. His face was a blur across the years, shifting, morphing, disappearing before it could be captured. The name he answered to was always new, a mask chosen for convenience, never an identity to hold on to. He lived 4 lives, each distinct and separate, yet all threaded with the same untraceable intent. And then, just as the final pieces seemed to align, he vanished into a 5th life, one that no one ever glimpsed. The city still hums with the faint pulse of his legacy. Every alleyway he passed, every shadow he cast, lingers in the minds of those who chased him, but never caught him. The crimes he left behind were puzzles without solutions, stories half-told and mysteries that unravel only to twist tighter. Law enforcement files gather dust, informants vanish quietly, and surveillance footage degrades into grainy obscurity. The man known only through the ghosts of his 4 lives remains an enigma wrapped in darkness. Those who tried to get close, to peel back the layers, found themselves staring at mirrors reflecting a stranger. Each life he wore was an armor, a carefully constructed persona designed to erase the one true self, or perhaps to protect it. Was there even a real man beneath the masks? Or did the fragments of 4 lives themselves compose the whole? The question haunts every theory, every lead that dies before it can bloom. We saw the flicker of his final act, an escape cloaked in fire and silence, a signal sent into the void. But where that signal traveled, and what it summoned, remains an open question. Did he fade into obscurity, slipping beyond the reach of those who hunted him? Or does he still move among us, a shadow waiting for the right moment to reemerge? The answer lies buried beneath layers of smoke and mirrors, waiting for someone sharp enough to decipher the game he's playing. And here's the truth. The man who lived 4 lives was never captured, not because he was infallible, but because he was never truly one person at all. Each life was a shard of something larger, a puzzle piece fragmented across time and space. To chase him is to chase a phantom, a silhouette that changes shape with every step. Now, as the story closes on this chapter of shadowed crime and shifting identities, the question lingers in the air like a whispered threat. If someone could live 4 lives better than one, what does that do to their real self? Does it multiply their existence or erase it? Does the man behind the mask still exist, or has he dissolved into the very shadows he once commanded? We invite you to weigh in. What would you do if someone could live 4 lives at once? Would they lose themselves in the process, or become something entirely new? Share your thoughts, because in a world where identity is fluid and shadows are alive, the line between who we are and who we pretend to be is thinner than ever. Your voice might be the key to unlocking a mystery that no one else has dared to solve.